In this segment, we're going to talk about going the second mile. We talked about how there's different communication styles or languages, let's say, of love, of how to express love. And we've talked about how Jesus communicated and went about his daily life, not only as a divine being, but also as a human being, and throughout his relationships, personal, and throughout his ministry, the public life that he had. But in this segment, we're going to be talking about going the second mile. And here's where love becomes a choice. It's easy to love others the way that we naturally express affection. The challenge is loving them the way they need to receive it. In this final segment, we'll explore what Susan calls the second mile, the intentional practice of moving beyond ourselves to create deeper relationships, stronger families, and a more compassionate world. So tell us about the second mile, Susan, and what it's all about.
Well, we all know how we feel and what we need for love to be emotionally fulfilled. And what we usually need is usually how we project love in our communication style. And so we can love someone 100% in our own style, and maybe it's not being received as well as we would like. So we could recognize maybe that we're not being effective, that the person is still not feeling what we're intending. And I think parents go through this a lot, usually. This is, I think they can really relate to this. They feel like they're loving,
Teenagers, especially.
yeah, you're loving your child. there's, there's no more love. I mean, you love them as much as possible. And maybe they don't always get it. And so that's probably the best example of that. But there's something in that child that they need that
Yeah.
it's worth investigating and trying to find out how to connect with them. And that can evolve as they grow older and they become an adult or whatever. But basically, you always need to keep, your finger on the pulse of what does that individual need?
Yeah.
And then do you love them enough to go out of your comfort zone of love, of showing love, and do for them what they need? And
Okay.
that's what the second mile is. It's loving them so much that you'll do um, the style that they need to hit that emotional mark that you're trying to fill for them,
Okay.
especially the children or or close loved ones, family, a mate or whoever. And it's not always easy or comfortable for you to do that.
Yeah.
And so what it comes down to is, do you love them enough to love them in the style they need to be loved? And you're always gauging what they need, and the best way to ask is, what do you need? And sometimes you may be surprised. You may think you know what they need, but it may not be
You don't. You don't.
the
It's you
yeah,
misguide yourself to thinking that what you think they need is what they really need, but it's not.
right. And so what it comes down to is, again, what Jesus did is listening, asking questions, and that is that is where you begin. Um, especially in a long relationship, like family relationships or marriage, like we were talking about before. um, you never can stop really doing that, or you are in danger
Yeah.
of going into one of those ruts, like you said. It needs to be refreshed all of the time for you to really be successful in healing relationships.
Can I make a pause here and comment? And I think this goes both ways. And let me give an example. For a long time, and this is the relationship I had with my father, which now is very great. I think I we had to go through a long process and different things, long story. But it was a very really hard relationship. And one of the things that I always needed from my father was validation, do something that I needed validation and that I did this good, did it. And he would always, let's say that he wasn't expressing and I didn't understand his communication style when I was a kid. I had to become an adult. Uh, but in the way that he expressed, he was always criticizing, or he was, looking at pointing out the negativity, really, kind of souring up the moment. And I became accustomed to that until I got up to a point where I, was fed up with that, and I kind of distanced myself. But then I realized, and I said, I'm never gonna change my father. That's the way he is. That's the way he. And when I loved him for what he for what he is and who he is, and then realize that his communication, although harsh, and in Spanish we say amor apache, which is like Indian love, which is really tough. It's love, it's and you can really take it from there, from where it comes. So it's really also, when you're receiving that, you also understand, and you don't you do heal. You said the word heal, those relationships as well, when you're the receiver, not only who's communicating, or the
Exactly.
speaker.
Well, you're actually communicating by responding with grace and with forgiveness.
Yeah,
And also, it sounds like as you become an adult, understood that your father was loving you,
yeah,
was probably his method of trying to make you the best person that he could raise you to be, by saying, okay, you could do better here. You don't,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually,
what
that's it. Yeah,
may not have been perfect for you. And that, and there you could go and talk about an entire family. I don't know how many brothers and sisters you might have, but that would land differently on each personality, on each
yeah,
child. See, it's not a one size fits all thing when you're a parent either. You have to tailor it for each child, but not everyone does that. And I'm not saying I've done it to perfection. I'm still trying to learn the differences in my own. I have 4 kids. Still
yeah.
trying to learn the
And it's
differences.
it's four different worlds. It's four different persons that you have to understand.
Exactly. And they would all give you a different response as how loving a mother or how good of a mother I have been. And I'm being honest. And I would say that some of the kids are much easier to understand and to help them feel loved, because maybe my style isn't reaching more, So it's always a challenge. But I think that's awesome that you have, like, I don't know, given love and started a new relationship with your father. I mean, have you expressed to him? I mean,
No, yeah, definitely, definitely. No, and we went through a lot of different. I mean, it wasn't just a situation where we just distanced. I mean, we lived through different things, and I think it's really. I mean, it's a interesting story. Maybe I'll write a book one time, sometime. But there was a whole family legacy there, and a lot of bad things, and throughout, and in business, and a lot of things that we had to go through to mend, and to break a lot of bad cycles within the family, and that go beyond, it's and you can see those negative trajectories, or the negative spirals. But it was a lot of breaking that, and I see, not only in me, the way that I've evolved from as a person, but my father as well. And we discussed this, and in hindsight, we both, as individuals and collectively in our relationship, have really, really gone the second mile, if, to put it in a way, and understood each other. And it's no longer about trying to seek that validation, or try to seek that way of approval, or that to find that love in that communication with my father, but it's understanding in that, just relating with him, and the way that he is really loving, and I like it now. It serves me good.
it's awesome. I mean, that's what we're hoping for, is for everyone to be able to go go into these relationships with better understanding and more positive intent, for love, for forgiveness with each other. So I mean, we're in a tough world. We really are. And there's a lot of dysfunction in families and in relationships. And to be honest, a lot of people, I think we're at a place where people want to just give up and walk away from relationships. But as long as there's a sincere baseline, um, between people, I would never give up on somebody as long as they're
Yeah.
sincere. They're
Yeah.
worth
And in some cases, it's not giving up, but maybe putting things on hold. You don't know what evolution and what through what process and how long that process that person may have. Never
yeah,
give hope, and maybe you might have to distance because maybe some people cause you harm because of some process that they may be going through. But never give up on that. They will probably, eventually come out and and through that process and healed and improve that relationship. Because in some cases, you want to have that, but it's really too hard to have because there's no receptivity on the other part. I think both. That's why it's the second mile.
that
Both people
that's
have to want to come to the middle in
that's
the
really
end.
true. It takes 2
Yeah.
for people to maintain a relationship, a healthy relationship. If you've done everything you possibly can do to, um, lift that relationship up and to make it a good relationship, a healing relationship, then, you can't do more than that. I mean, you can put it on hold, like you said, time sometimes can do what we can't do in the moment.
And that's the beauty and the magic and the be yeah, the about time. Time gives everybody the potential to become perfect. Well, not potential, becomes a reality. So each step, it doesn't matter if some metals take a longer time to and higher degrees to heat up and melt, and that might be it. So never give up on anybody and always be open. And you'll know when it's sincere, and it doesn't mean, because sometimes people may say, oh, he's done it many times. You know when it's sincere, and it's always good to put a hold, let's put it that way, in relationships when they're not productive. But it's really interesting, and yeah, it's throughout life, and I think that's part of growing up, and definitely, as I had children, and I started becoming, my dad's role as a father, as in business and everything that, or not everything, but a lot of things that I criticize, and I, maybe thought that I could do better, not do better, but that I was maybe too harsh on him for that. Once I lit them, I said, "Well, it wasn't that easy after all, There's a lot of stuff to be learned, and there's even I don't know what the name is. I don't know if it's in English, but there's the way something that goes like the way that a son views his father, and it says at 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, and it goes all the way to when the father dies, and at the beginning he's the hero. Then you see the middle part where, father is an idiot. He always, messes his things up and, see that progression. And in the end, he says, I regret the death of my father. He was such a wise man and I could have learned so much. So that's really important to consider.
Well, that goes kind of back to the commandment about honoring your father and mother if possible, because you really do learn so much from them if you do, and valuable information. It makes your life easier in the long run because you want to make the most of their wisdom, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Instead of starting from square one every generation. But yeah, that's why it's good to have grandparents around too, if at all possible.
Yeah, no, definitely, and to have the family pitch in and contribute, because and we were talking about this the other day, as well. I think this is a good 2 weeks that we're gonna be talking about these topics, but my cousin was talking about heaths, which is centers, and he calls this power sources, and there's a family heath where you have the living room, the fireplace. That's where stories are told, where things are interacted, and where what's the typical Christmas scene? It's everybody gathered around a fireplace next to the tree, being there. So that's really one image to point out, and how valuable the relationships are among each other.
Yeah, especially the stories. The stories stay
Yeah.
with. Yeah,
The family stories, and that's another point. The family stories, not only the all the myth and legends that we have from all civilizations, but the family stories, and the uncle did this and the way the grandmother did that, and all those and they make them immortal, in a way.
and we should really. it's wonderful because a lot of times many of the traits that were in a certain person that like is gone. And my great grandchildren would never know. I can see in them, it passes on. The
Yeah,
traits continue and the
definitely.
family, it stays alive. The person stays alive through the young ones coming up.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And you would say, oh, she was too close, or she got this, or she picked it. There was somebody died, and a child was born 5 years later, and he has those those
Exactly.
traits and those things. It's magical, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and they're very precious. I will just say that, we're never gonna be perfect, but it's worth the effort when you see people happier, and
yeah,
that's what we're going for. We want happier families, happier marriages, and we didn't talk about it, but if you guess and you just continue to guess, you're liable to be right with the mark with the emotions,
yeah,
with the love 20% of the time. And that's why we're having problems with divorce and having
yeah,
problems
yeah,
with families breaking up and not speaking because they're not they're not looking
yeah.
for the results of the type of love and communication that they're putting out and not improving upon it. So it takes effort.
Yeah. No, definitely. And it's really important to, in this effort that you're putting and you're saying, and that at least we put it out and we try to get to that second mile. We might not be able to get there because it doesn't depend just on us. It depends on the other person. And this is something that we want to point out.
Yeah.
It's not that, magically just will it. The other will has to be in there, and that's the thing about humans. But at least if you give that extra mile, and it's not on you, you really put it out, and you try to mend things and you try to work things out, then at least you feel relieved, and you feel that it wasn't on you, and all that spite you might have, or all those bad feelings you might have really dissolve and open up, right?
Right. And one of the things I will say about Jesus is he he when he tried to do something or make a gesture for someone, it tended to create gratitude in them. And there's
Yeah,
no better time to get through and really make a deep connection with someone than when they're feeling gratitude. And I
yeah,
think that's a basic response in everything we're talking about now. If we break through into
yeah.
someone's heart like that, they feel gratitude and it opens them up to be receptive to the
Gratitude. Yeah, I think that's the word. That's the word to when people feel that they have that gratitude because of what you uh lovingly did without any retribution or anything from there. I think
Yeah.
that really is the key.
They
Definitely.
see that there's no self-interest, that
Yeah.
you're doing it for them because you care. That
Yeah.
has to
And I'm
be
going to
respected.
point out something that about this podcast and what we talk about, within the Rancho book. And a lot of people ask me, what's the catch? Or so, what's the church, or where do you have to go? And what? There's no catch. I mean, there's no structure. There's no dogma. You don't even have to read the book. You can only, learn about the teachings, which are really good, were really heartfelt. And there's no catch. You and I think having this conversation, and if somebody's really taking heed to it, and their life is changing in any way, then that it for us is more than any, and it's gratitude for that, for being able to uplift somebody, right?
That's why we do it. We
Yeah,
care. We want them to have a better life. Yeah. Hope
awesome,
it
awesome.
helps. Yeah.
Well, we're going to close it off with that. It was a really nice conversation, and a topic that's maybe off what we usually talk about. But I think it's really important how maybe not we neglect maybe this topic, but how important it is in how we relate with people, and we really build that brotherhood, on Earth. So thank you for coming, Susan. It was a pleasure as always.
Thank you. Well, God is love, and that's what makes the world go round. So it's a good
Yes,
conversation to have.
definitely, definitely. Well, and to you that watched us, if you liked it, please remember to subscribe and like it and share. You don't need to put on the reminders because we're basically every day of the week except Fridays no, Fridays we do the podcast. It's just the weekends, but basically all the rest of the week. So till next time, I'm Santiago Kneeland. This is the Divine Within, the invisible connection with God. Take care and carpe diem.
On the Divine Within podcast, we share real conversations to help you find a personal connection with God. My goal is to support your faith, growth, and journey toward discovering the divine within yourself. Join us to deepen your faith and spiritual journey.